Welcome to another DragonLance Saga Dungeon Mastering 101 episode. It is Palast Yearth Green the 20th. My name is Adam, and today we're talking about the friction that comes with our hobby. We're friends playing a game, but we're also human beings with different interpretations of rules, different play styles, and different egos. If you think your campaign will go 20 sessions without a disagreement, you are poorly mistaken, my friend. But here's the secret. Conflict is not the end of the game. It's a test of your leadership. So today we're going to learn how to turn arguments into conversations. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media or get $10 by signing up to start playing Games using my affiliate link. All right. So this Dungeon Master series, I've done a broad overview of all of the different categories that I'm going to be covering. And right now we're in the DM mindset category. We're basically halfway through the entire series that I had planned. And we're almost done with the DM mindset. We have like one more episode in this category left, I believe. But all of that is to say, after having covered a 1,000-foot view, and we're now getting the more granular view, the episodes become a little bit shorter. The content, we've already touched on some of it already. And so now we're just getting a little bit more detail about stuff we've already kind of talked about. So if this is your first time here, I would encourage you to go check out the DM101 playlist, because that has everything we've talked about thus far. And know that I'm going to do my best to cover as much relevant content about the topics as possible, which means there might be a little overlap. But that's really for the benefit of everyone, so I hope you're okay with it. And if you're joining live, let me know that you're here and say hi. But more importantly, let me know what you think about the topic, and if you have any suggestions, tips, tricks, or maybe problem situations that you experienced. Because the reality is we all love this hobby of TTRPGs. We have all played for at least a little while, and some of us for decades, plural. And in a lot of cases, I would argue nearly every case, everyone has had that moment where it is contentious at the table, where people are just sort of sniping at each other. And it should never, ever really get to that point. The Dungeon Master has a couple of hats that they have to wear, not just adjudicating the rules of the game, guiding players through scenarios or setting up scenarios for the players, controlling all of the monsters and NPCs and all of that, helping players out when they require help, guiding the table's energy and including everyone at the table when inevitably some people are going to be falling off and, losing interest. There's a lot of hats that a DM has to wear, but one of them is also kind of being a parental type figure. And I don't like to use that word because it insinuates everyone has a different view about what parenting is. And so you just that word comes with baggage. And what I mean by that is I see parenting a lot like I see dungeon mastering, where we are not here as parents to create a specific version of a human adult. We're here to nurture and encourage and influence, but ultimately respect and encourage these individuals to become individual human beings that are not carbon copies of us, that are not our property, that are independent, autonomous beings unto themselves. And that's the same way other players are. They're independent, autonomous beings unto themselves, and you as a dungeon master are just trying to incentivize and encourage and facilitate fun. That's all it comes down to. So I see them very, very similarly, and that's why I sort of see a parental view, because when conflict arises between players, it's really incumbent upon, one, the players to be adult and not get to that point. But then two, the dungeon master needs to do their best to redirect attention and focus. If you can pull it away from them and be the sort of middleman that, resolves the conflict immediately, then by all means, get your butt in there and do it. And honestly, as an adult, if we see something going on, no matter where we are, we should really step in and resolve that, whatever it is. I've been burned by that idea before. So it's not like this wide sweeping, truth. But look, if someone needs a little assistance, help someone out, There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, that being said, let's get into the topics because we've got some stuff to talk about and I've got some examples that I want to bring up. And again, whenever I bring up an example, if like players at my table are watching this at any point, understand that I'm not calling anyone out negatively. I'm just providing a situation where we adjudicated a situation. And that's it. So, number 1, rules versus fun. That is the philosophy that we should all be at the starting point. The most important mindset shift for handling rule conflicts is to remember that the rules exist to facilitate the fun, not to govern the fun. Now, this is really, really hard for a lot of players to wrap their heads around because the rules are the boundaries in which they are allowed to operate. You start stripping those away and they no longer know what they are able to do or say or how to play. And that is a fair criticism on the player's side. And that's why consistency and being very, very clear is incredibly important for dungeon masters whenever it comes to adjudicating rules or giving a call on a player's declared action or idea. Always be consistent. But understanding, no matter what, you don't need any rules to play these types of games. We have the rules for people who don't really, want to improv or rule on the fly or have it loose. And it's for the people who really, really are rules lawyers because that's what they love about the game are the rules. But dungeon masters, you don't need any rules at all. You don't even need dice. Like you can just make stuff up and still have a wildly entertaining situation because all you're there to do is to adjudicate the situations. So you would just be then taking control of the dice. And we do this in a lot of ways anyway. So there's no reason why you have to have a set of rules no matter what. Use logic and use the situation to guide all of your decision making, and you'll be pretty good for most calls that you're going to need to make. However, I do my best to stay within the boundaries of rules for whatever the game system is I'm playing. But in almost every case, in almost every game system, people have home rules that they play with. So you never really know how someone else plays the exact same game you do, so that when they join your group or you join their group, there's clearly always going to be a little bit of like, wait, what situation's coming up, right? So that's really what this whole conversation is based on. If you find yourself arguing over the phrasing of a spell for 10 minutes, you've already lost. The game stopped being a story and started to be a tax audit. No one likes doing taxes, and no one likes arguing over spells. What I tell all of my players is, and I'm going to cover this again in a second, if you disagree with a ruling and I am just way off base, challenge me once. Say, well, actually the wording is X. I'll take a closer look and I'll try to be as quick as possible about it, and then I'll make a second ruling. It might be the same, it might be different. In either case, that is the rule that we're going to be going with, whatever that second adjudication is. And after the game, we'll have a conversation about it. I always make sure I at least present an opportunity for players to come back and say, hey, you know what? I really didn't like that ruling, or this is what the text says. And then we'll just have a back and forth about it. But what you never want to do is stop the game so that one player can try to bend the words of a ruling in order to take ownership of the moment. No one is a main in real life, and no one is a main in the game. That's just something egotistical people try to do. You need to make sure as a dungeon master that you're giving everyone an opportunity for fun, and you're not costing everyone fun by paying too much attention to one player. Most adults understand this, though, so it's not really an issue. At least I haven't run into it as an adult as much as I've run into it as a kid. It was a constant issue then. Hey, Vinicius, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was the pause and decide protocol, right? So when a conflict happens mid-scene, don't let it spiral out of control. Try to use something like this script, okay? So we're going to go in a 3-step process here. Acknowledge what they're saying, make a ruling for now, and then review it for later. Now, I just talked about this, but I'm going to give you a bit of a script to go by, and this is actually going to help you in every case. And it's not just adjudicating rules for games with players. You actually use this in your real life with coworkers or children or whatever that you're dealing with on your day-to-day basis, because it's about respect. It's not about the dungeon master being in control. It's not about the players being silenced or trying to voice their opinion too hard. It's about showing respect for other human beings that are supposed to be having fun together. So with that in mind, the acknowledgement comes in the form of, I hear you, and I see why you read it that way. So you set up an instantly, they are an individual with an opinion, and you recognize that. Then you follow it up with the rule for now. For this moment, we're going to rule it this way to keep the story moving. So then you clarify, I hear you. This is why I'm going to make this ruling right now. And then you follow it up with, if that's not how it works, we'll look it up after the session and use the correct rule next time. I've done this in nearly every single game I've ever played. Not only am I playing multiple rule sets, which get all mixed up in my addled old man brain, but there's also a bazillion different spells and actions with modern games that it's really hard if you're playing a whole bunch of different editions to keep everything straight. So you're not going to remember every little thing as a dungeon master, nor should anyone expect you to. So they should respect you enough to say, okay, you want to run it this way for this. I'm going to make sure I type up my little essay about why I disagree with it and send it on over to you after the game. And then make sure you follow up with them and read it and hear what they're saying and then reply to them respectfully. Again, this whole thing's about fun. It's not about having a fight or argument about something as stupid as the wording of a spell or an action. So why this works? It validates the player's intelligence, but it protects the table's momentum. And I'm one of those people who I cannot stand dead air. Not only because I live stream every single game I play, and that's just a horrible thing to have in any type of streaming media, just dead air of people staring at a camera. It's the fact that players want to get moving, and when there's dead air, players start to get bored, and their attention starts to deviate. And you don't want players' attention deviating. You want them to stay focused on what you're doing and what they're supposed to be planning on doing next. So deal with it quickly and then really deal with it afterward. All right, the next thing, handling disagreements over creative choices. So sometimes the conflict isn't about the rules. It's about the narrative. My character wouldn't do that, or that NPC shouldn't act like that. When you run into situations like this, and you will always run into situations like this every single game, always remember, first and foremost, the Dungeon Master never controls the player. Don't ever do it. Don't ever try to do it. If you suggest the player does something, give an immediate explanation why. Like, you're feared, so you would be running away and dropping your weapons at 50% of the time. Roll the dice, you've dropped your weapons and you're running away. Now, the player can complain and argue all they want, but this is something that's controlling them, and it's not the Dungeon Master. In this case, it's fear. So they have to just rely on your calling. If it's a situational thing that just like a very attractive barmaid walks up to you, spills a little bit of ale on your trousers and giggles, you can't help but blush. And they're like, I wouldn't act like that. Okay, well then what would you do? And that's it. It's as simple as that. You were trying to paint a picture, a small scene. They didn't want to go along with that. That's fine. Ask them what they would do instead. but never, ever argue over a player's character when they didn't choose to do it for not wanting to do what you told them to do. Always have justifications, and really like rational justifications for why you're suggesting the player should do X or Y. When it comes to NPCs, the players have no choice. They have no voice. They have no option. Full stop. I've had players consistently try to influence NPCs through cantrips and through just speaking in their minds, as if it was some sort of like charm or command spell, and I never let it fly. And they keep trying. I don't know why, but they keep trying to do it. And the reality is they're trying to be inventive, but I am trying to balance the game with other aspects of the game. So if, for example, if sneak allows you to be invisible and walk right across someone's view path, there's no need for the spell of invisibility. You could just sneak. But there's reasons why other rules and spells exist and why you can't heavily influence someone with prestidigitation and yelling in their face. Now, there'll be small shifts that I allow, but not like a full 180. I mean, always reference morale, situation, and logic. And again, sometimes, given the right situation, I'll and maybe that's why they keep trying to do it, because given the right circumstances, I will let player inventiveness overrule the rules, but it's very rare if there is another rule out there or another ability out there that would then be the real way to do what they're trying to do. So when it comes to NPCs, just you as the Dungeon Master are in total control of the non-player characters. And that's why they're called non-player characters. The PCs have no say in it. If they don't like it because of especially with DragonLance. DragonLance has some very specific cultural and regional behaviors with specific races, but they are not a monolith. So that's how you can have players be Sylvanisty and not be racist, That's how you can have, basically every elf is pretty racist, except for the sea elves, it seems like, are very, very xenophobic and racist. And most dwarves are as well. But that's why you can have player characters that aren't like that, because the races are not monoliths. So that even includes non-player characters. There's always a reason why characters, player or non-player, act the way they do. And hopefully it's informed by what they've experienced in their lives to date, the way they were raised, the people they were raised around, etc. The era that they're living in currently, there's a lot of reasons why we act the way we do, and it's not always like, well, I'm an older middle-class white man, so I have to act X way or Y way. I don't think so. I am me, and I act the way I choose to act. Same with you, and same with your players, and same with the non-players, characters. All right, so always as the Dungeon Master, when this happens, and again, it will happen, stay curious. And just say, well, help me understand what you're seeing here. Why do you think you wouldn't do that or the NPC wouldn't do that? And then, and I can't stress this enough, avoid the Dungeon Master ego. We're all human beings. We all have egos. It's normal. It's natural. But you need to be able to suppress that if you're dealing with other human beings on this planet. Hopefully, it's a tool that you have developed in life already. But if not, this is your moment to try to develop it, right? Don't defend your choice because you're the DM. It's the same thing as a parent. Never say, because I said so. Because all that's going to do is make the child that you're saying that to or the player you're saying that to resent you and want to disobey you even more because you didn't give them a reason. You just said, because I am more important than you. And that's not true. I mean, in any level, it's not true. But in the game situation, it's certainly not true. So, don't defend your choices simply because you're the Dungeon Master. Explain your intention. Say stuff like, I'm portraying the guard as tired and cynical because I wanted the scene to feel like a drag on your resources. I do this a lot where the players are like, what? They would really do that? Or, I make some sort of rule adjudication that they don't really understand. I was like, well, this is really a narrative choice. It's not going to affect you as far as mechanical means, but you should still, sort of, and it comes, a really good example of this is Dragon Fear. In Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Fear doesn't really affect you at all if you're like 5 hit die or higher, meaning like 5th level or higher. But in almost all of the Heroes of the Lance are 5th level or higher at the very beginning of the campaign. Not Raceland. He's 3rd level, but everyone else is like 5th or 6th level or something like that. And so when they run across their first dragon, mechanically, they don't shit their pants and run away. But as far as the lore for the world, they should definitely act like they're afraid, because this is a mythical beast that has not been seen in 1,000 years. And you're just going to act like a tough guy, walk up to it and strike it? No. You've got to role play. That's the whole point of the game. And so I encourage players to look, this is not going to mechanically affect you with fear, but you are feared. And then they pick up on the cue. Oh, okay, that means you just want me to act because of the world, because of the situation, because of the game itself, not because my character is going to drop his weapon and run away. So the character's not going to run away and act as though they're feared, but the player is going to play up the character with caution, a little bit of humility and respect for the raw power that is standing in front of them. Stuff like that. You encounter Lord Soth, it's the same thing. Yeah, you may not be affected by his fear aura, but it's Lord Soth. Show a little bit of respect as the player character to this, incredibly powerful being. Same with casting magic in Dragonlance. Hey, Torin, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Magic in Dragonlance does not actually drain you at all. It's just you use a spell and you lose the spell, right? In Advanced Dungeons and Dragons anyway. But as far as the role-playing goes, it's like a drug. You're pulling power from the god, the moon gods, Solinari, Lunitari, and Nuitari, and they're fueling you with this drug called magic. And as soon as you use it, you're exhausted by it. Now, this was a narrative role-playing trope that we picked up from the original Chronicle novels about Dragonlance. But it's such a beautiful narrative element that I encourage players to use it. So yes, you in 5th edition in Dragonlance, you could use cantrips every single whatever interval second you want over and over and over again. But as far as the role-playing aspect of it, you're exhausted when you use spells. And the higher level spell, the more exhausted you get. The more spells you cast, the more exhausted you get. So there's not a mechanical change, but there's certainly a role-playing change that you should be paying attention to. So I often use that as the guiding principle when people complain about, well, my player wouldn't feel that way, or that doesn't happen because I still have 3 other spells and, whatever. Like, no, just role play that you're a little tired because you're harnessing arcane forces from the cosmos, man. Just play it up. It's a little bit of fun. Have a little bit of fun. And if they really don't want to do it, don't try to make them do it. Just be like, okay, you don't want to do it? You don't want to do it. It's the same thing with people who love role-playing versus people like the act of like having social role-playing conversations and people who don't love it. Some people just love combat. Some people love having those dialogue experiences. Don't try to force players to play in ways that they don't enjoy, because they probably give them an opportunity, but if they don't pick it up, then they don't want to. And you're not there to force them to play your way. You're there to encourage and facilitate the way they want to play. All right. You heard Lord Soth and your head's up. Justin, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Lord Soth Unite is just like heard around the world. All right, so the next one I want, and so ultimately the result of this is that you turn a confrontation into a collaborative discussion. You're saying, I'm portraying the guard this way. I want the scene to drag on your resources. This is the way I was seeing it. And if it's their player that you are trying to have act a certain way, how would you like to do it? And ask them, and they'll always come through with something. All right, the next thing, the gentle intervention. The sidebar. If a player is consistently pushing back or disrupting the table, try your best not to address it in front of the group. You don't want to have an us versus them moment. Not only is it just poor optics, but ultimately you want to resolve the situation. And when someone feels ganged up upon, they usually tend to double down in their stance and they don't hear what you're saying. They don't hear what you're saying as much as they hear, I need to defend myself from being attacked. And so you never really get to the core of the situation, and it just becomes this endless cycle of confrontation. You don't need to do that, so don't. Just at the end of the game, say discreetly, hey, can we grab 5 minutes after the session? I just want to talk to you about handling the rules at the table. And if you haven't done this at session 0 already, this is your time to do it. And be very clear. We're all adults. And even if you're not, talk to your players like they are adults, because you're all on the same level right now. You're all players trying to have fun at a table. That's it. So treat them with respect like they're just as important as you and anyone else at the table, because they are. And just say, look, this is how I'm running my game. You seem to have a problem with that. Is there some way we can come to terms with this? Because if not, and don't do the threat initially, but ultimately you have to be ready and willing to say, I don't think you're a good fit for this table. The players should see that already if they're not. But sometimes they just don't really understand the vibe you're trying to put out, or they don't really understand the confines of the game you're trying to run. And so give them the opportunity to clarify. But if they're just being constant negative at the table, sometimes you just got to ask them to walk away. It's that simple. And it's not to say that their version of playing is better or worse. It's just that it doesn't match. That's it. You're not a good match. So be an adult and let's move on. I say use that as a last result because in most cases, people are willing because they want to play the game and they're at your table for a reason. So just have a one-to-one. Just be like, all right, look, this is why I'm doing this game this way. Why are you constantly coming at me with your rules? I'd prefer it if you did that after the game. Not only does it stop the game and kind of put a stink on everyone's face when it happens, but it drops down the fun. And we're all here trying to have fun. So can you do that for me? And if they're willing, then awesome. And if they're not, be like, all right, well, this clearly isn't working. So I'm not going to invite you to the next session. And this is why. Be very, very clear with people. Always keep it DM and player versus the problem, not DM versus the player. So if, for example, they don't like rulings because they're rules lawyers, just be like, I don't want you running no, just be like, look, I understand those are the rules, but this is the way that I'm running the game right now. And it's because I want it to be dramatic and, accessible and whatever. Give them your honest reasons. But don't say, I'm right and you're wrong. Because that's generally never the case. And it's just a shitty thing to say. You might as well just say, because I said so. All right. That only happens with rule Nazis. Hey, Warlock JMN, you're right. It does only happen with rule Nazis. Well, consistently, it happens with rule Nazis. Every once in a while, it'll happen with anyone that just wants, their ruling to come out on top. But yeah, you have a very, very solid point. It's really why I tend not to play with rule Nazis, honestly. All right, the next segment I want to talk about is preventing resentment. So resentment builds when players feel like the game is unfair or that their choices don't matter. This isn't often the result of the DM saying, because I said so. All right. So you can avoid this altogether by not saying that ever. But just be transparent. Look, say, I'm going to make this ruling because of X. I know it's tough, but it's going to raise the stakes for the next encounter. Explain to your players why you're doing what you're doing, and they will have faith that you're not just trying to murder them. I know with my players in the Tyranny of Dragons campaign that I'm running, I had a moment at the end of a game. I'm like, I'm really struggling with trying to challenge you guys because you're just so powerful at this low level. And so, it's not that I'm trying to stop your spells from working, or I'm not trying to tamp down your play styles. It's just that I'm trying to challenge you, because that's the kind of game that I'm trying to run. I'm trying to run a game that's not just you sweeping over everything without seeming effort. I'm trying to make it so you feel like there's real stakes. Like you might not make it out of every single encounter. And to think that maybe not every encounter is intended to be battle. So after having that conversation, I think it went a little bit better. But again, there's also, just elements of the game system you're playing that are, just problems. And players are just trying to play their characters. And you never want to have this dichotomy of player versus DM, It's always we're working together to tell a good story and to have some fun. So be transparent is the bottom line there. And then take ownership. Look, and this is, again, in life. I've said this before. I'll say it 1,000 times. I've made so many mistakes in life mistakes that I was embarrassed to admit that I made. But it's a part of growth as a human being. We will all make mistakes, some of them minor and meaningless, some of them dramatic and devastating. It's going to happen. What's important about making mistakes is to own up to it. Don't try to blame it on someone else. Don't try to deflect so you don't look bad, because the only thing it's going to do is make you look bad. You just need to own up to it. You're not going to look bad. You're going to look good. You're going to look like a good human being, a strong, independent thinking human being who can admit when they're wrong and do their best not to repeat the same mistake. That's called growth, and that's what adults need to do. So I know it's against our natural instinct of not wanting to admit that we made a mistake. It's totally natural, but we have to own up to those really ugly moments. It's hard, but it means you have character, and there's nothing more important in life than being able to grow and be a better version of yourself and to show that you have character doing so. So even as a DM, if you make a mistake, admit it. I've done this way too much. That was my bad. I misread the ability, or let's adjust. A DM who admits fallibility is a DM that players will trust for years. Now, I have found this to be the case all the time. Sometimes I'll make a ruling in a moment, and then I'll take another look. I was like, I made a mistake. I apologize about that. And I move on. Or I'll correct it. Like in the last game, there was a situation where extra damage was applied to someone that shouldn't have been, and a player called me out on it. I said, "Oh, you know what? You're absolutely right. Thank you for correcting me." And you move on. I made a mistake. They pointed it out. I corrected the mistake. We moved on, never to think about it again. Well, clearly I thought about bringing it up, but other than that, it's not a hampering to the actual gameplay. It's a really important muscle to learn, admitting when you're wrong. You have to learn it. Exercise it. All right, it's not the second to last. The penultimate segment I want to talk about is DragonLance, the world of authority. In Krynn, some things are non-negotiable, like the power of the gods or the severity of the Knights of Solamnia. If players challenge these world truths, always remember the yes but approach that we talked about in episode 12. And that is, no, you cannot walk into the High Clerist's tower as a beggar. But if you have an introduction from a local merchant, you might get an audience. So you're not shutting the player down. You're just giving them justification for why that's not really going to happen, and an opportunity for how they can get what they wanted in the first place. Another example, I was running a game with a really old friend of mine, and he wanted to be a thief who snuck into the Tower of High Sorcery at Palanthas and stole some magic items as a backstory. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. But if you want to be a mage thief, a dual class or a multi-class, then I could have you have access to that Towers of High Sorcery as a backstory, but you would have to take a level or like 3 levels in Mage so that you would then be the level in order to have taken the test of High Sorcery, thus gained access. But just being a thief as a backstory to break through the protective groves of a Tower of High Sorcery to steal a magic item, that's just not going to work. And look, people don't always like that. But there has to be boundaries about the world you're playing in. Otherwise, there's no point in playing in that world. So, for Krynn, magic is governed by the Towers of High Sorcery, the Orders of High Sorcery. That's it. The gods control it. The Orders of High Sorcery govern it. And if you're not a part of it, then you're a renegade and hunted down and told to either join or suffer the consequences. That's a choice. And it will always be a situation. I have a player right now who is not a member of the Orders of High Sorcery, and they are being hunted. So it will consistently come up. So there's always those consequences involved. If you're a paladin and you worship a deity, and you go against those deities' tenets, you are not going to have those powers of that paladin. If you are a druid and you forsake your god, you are going to lose your abilities because they were granted to you by your god. I mean, there's rules for a reason when it comes to world settings. It's what makes the setting special and exciting. It's why so many people flew into such a rage when Wizards of the Coast released Shadow of the Dragon Queen, because it fundamentally broke a lot of Dragonlance, fundamentals to the campaign setting. And you just can't do that without justification or reason. Otherwise, and this is why people fly into rages when authors ignore established canon. Because you're like, no, you set up rules to this world that we all understand, and now you're just willy-nilly breaking them because you feel like it? You have to have a reason for it. Otherwise, why the hell are you writing a Dragonlance novel? It's important for a reason. Otherwise, just don't play it. Play some other Prime Material world. There's nothing wrong with that. Just do it. That's why you play Pathfinder 1E, but with AD&D, Dragonlance race and class limitations. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I still have never played Pathfinder. I really need to give it a go. All right, so the last segment I wanted to talk about is the DM101 mindset. Ultimately, it all comes down to this. Leadership, not control. You aren't a judge in a courtroom. You're a facilitator of a shared group activity. If your players feel heard, even when the final ruling goes against them, they will respect your authority. And don't let being a DM go to your head. You're just a person that is as fallible as everyone else. You're just trying to have fun, just like everyone else at the table. Disagreements are inevitable, but resentment is optional. By ruling in a moment, researching later, and communicating with respect, you keep the game's momentum high and the table goodwill even higher. And that is all I got for you guys today. So thank you so much for tuning in. That is it for this episode of Dungeon Mastering 101. How do you handle the player who just loves to argue the rules? And what's your go-to phrase for keeping things moving? Shut up and sit in the corner. Something like that, maybe. Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. It all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patrons Aaron Hardy and D. Robert Handy, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of the YouTube members. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Sláinte mhath.